USA. No Musk, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Musk, no KKK, no fascist USA.
Have you ever wondered how long you can stay on top if everything around you is crumbling? Today we are going to tell you about how one country can destroy an entire empire. Yes,
product line and the impact of them trying to chase more sales at the back end of last year. That means it's short on inventory. It can't necessarily sell as many vehicles or doesn't have as many in stock to sell. So there is that issue there of a confluence of impacts, which means that sales have been falling. Again, the question is how much more that will impact into February as well, given that the back end of last year in 2024, Tesla sales did slip overall.
When Elon Musk first announced the launch of his company Tesla, he wasn't just promising a revolution in the automotive industry. He offered humanity something much bigger, a future that didn't depend on carbon footprints and pollution. Tesla became a symbol of progress, ambition, and technology that was to be the foundation for a new era. But what happens when political games interfere with this perfect world? When a country you once partnered with decides to take on the role of your enemy? The Canadian government decided to respond to the challenge posed by Musk and his ambitious policies by imposing 100% tariffs on all Tesla cars, and the consequences of this move have shaken the entire industry. At first glance, these tariffs may seem like a mere economic move, but they are much deeper than that. They essentially double the cost of Tesla vehicles for Canadian buyers, making it nearly impossible for most to purchase the company's models. For example, if a Model Y that cost around $55,000 is now going to cost over $100,000, demand for such cars drops dramatically. But Canada has gone further than just raising taxes. The measures are a political act directed not only against Tesla, but also against Musk himself, who in recent years has become one of the world's most famous and controversial businessmen. For the Canadian government, it was a move that could be explained as much by economic necessity as political ambition.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
Amid growing tensions between Canada and the United States, Musk has found himself at the center of a major political game. His proximity to former US President Donald Trump was an additional factor that identified him as a strategic target. Canadian authorities, frustrated by Trump's policies and his trade wars, found in Musk a convenient scapegoat. And now Tesla, as the largest player in the electric car market, has become hostage to a political game where an economic hit on Musk and his company has become a way to pressure the White House. In the eyes of Canadians, Musk became the epitome of American individualism, which they sought to stop. But that wasn't the only blow Canada was able to deliver. The Canadian government also decided to end a major contract with Starlink, a network of satellites that was supposed to bring internet connectivity to the most remote areas of the country. The contract, valued at $66 million, was cancelled just a few months after it was signed, which was another blow to Musk's business empire. It's not just the loss of an important client, it's also a strategic loss. Canadian authorities were clearly unwilling to support projects associated with a man whose actions were perceived as threats to the stability of the economy. In response, Musk decided to call on his political connections in the US to organize an economic countermeasure against Canada, further escalating the conflict.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. A lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
However, governments and companies were not the only ones involved. Panic gripped investors as well. Amid growing threats and political instability, Tesla's stock began to plummet. A 29% loss in a month was a serious signal for the entire market, and the stock continued to decline. Musk, known for his ability to solve crisis situations, found himself in a difficult position this time. Investors began to reduce their stakes in the company, fearing further losses. Cumulatively, the stock lost almost $50 billion of its value in a short period of time. In this situation, even the largest investment funds, such as Vanguard and BlackRock, began to revise their strategies and withdraw money from Tesla, which made Musk's situation even more difficult. Meanwhile, it wasn't just in Canada that political pressure was mounting. In Europe, the situation with Tesla also became critical. In Germany, sales dropped by 70%, a result not only of economic factors, but also of growing dissatisfaction with Musk's political views. In the US, Tesla owners began to erase logos from their cars to avoid being associated with Musk and his political stance. Social media was filled with photos and posts from people who are now ashamed of their commitment to Tesla. Authorities in many countries have begun to view Tesla not only as a car manufacturer, but also as a political symbol that cannot be cooperated with.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
In this situation, Musk found himself in the role of a pariah. His reputation, which was previously associated with innovation and leadership in technology, has now become a cause for numerous protests. In many cities in Europe and North America, Tesla has been targeted by vandals. Cars were smashed, offensive slogans were written on them, and in some places arson was set. For example, in a French city, an entire Tesla showroom was set on fire, resulting in multi-million-dollar damages. Such acts of violence became commonplace, and anti-Musk sentiment only grew stronger by the day. Meanwhile, Chinese competitors such as BYD and NIO wasted no time. They were taking over the market at breakneck speed, pushing Tesla out of the lead. In China, Tesla had already lost almost half of the market, and its cars were no longer seen as a symbol of the future. Chinese brands offered cheaper and more technologically advanced cars, which hit Musk hard. No measures, including price cuts, could bring back the previous interest in the brand. Against this background, Musk found himself in the epicenter of a global crisis. The situation with Tesla became so serious that the company itself was on the verge of disappearing from a number of key markets. Musk, who was accustomed to emerge victorious from any difficulties, found himself in a situation where his previous strategies no longer worked. He was forced to make decisions that could affect the future of the company, but all of these decisions seemed no longer sufficient to return to its former state of leadership. As Musk and his company struggled to cope with growing economic difficulties, political pressure from all sides continued to mount. Unsurprisingly, the authorities in the US, who had always been supportive of Musk, began to struggle. As the economic crisis in Canada continued to eat into Tesla's resources, the White House found itself on the brink of a choice: either make concessions and ease sanctions against Canada, or continue the hard pressure, hoping for long-term benefits for the US economy. With the growing standoff with Canada, political decisions became the center of global attention. Against this backdrop, the White House faced a stark choice of whether to back down or keep up the pressure despite the global economic consequences. While Musk was going through the biggest challenges of his career, the Canadian side launched even tougher measures against Tesla. Musk, who has always been willing to fight, realized that he would need to act decisively to get out of the crisis. In this context, Canada proved to be not just an economic adversary, but also a political symbol for Musk, who was facing growing protests and pressure. Musk realized that he was part of a broader conflict that affected not only his business but also his personal reputation. Relations between Canada and the US were at an all-time high, and for Musk, this was a real test. Canada not only increased sanctions against Tesla, but also began considering possible actions against Musk's other companies. In addition, Canada took tough measures aimed at exacerbating Musk's economic problems. Banning Tesla from federal and municipal programs was one step. Much more competitive prices. While Tesla was losing ground in old markets, Chinese companies began to aggressively capture new ones. NIO, for example, offered unique models that combined advanced technology with an affordable price. Unlike Tesla, this company was able to offer cars with improved safety features and mileage range, which attracted the attention of European buyers. In response, Tesla tried to lower the prices of its cars, but this strategy did not yield the expected results. Instead of winning new markets, Tesla has seen a decline in confidence among its loyal customers. In Germany, which was once one of the most stable markets for the company, sales dropped by 70%. This was not only due to the emergence of new competitors, but also due to the deteriorating political situation, as Musk became increasingly politically engaged, which affected the company's reputation. Reputation problems became one of the most serious for Tesla. In particular, a wave of rejections of Tesla cars by old customers began in the United States. People who had previously been proud to own a car of this brand now began to stick new logos on their cars or hide the original emblems in order not to be associated with Musk and his political views. Tesla owners began posting messages on social media about how ashamed they were of their choices, and posts appeared on forums suggesting that Tesla's labels be replaced with more neutral ones, such as electric car. This further degraded the company's image and caused Musk to have a crisis of confidence with customers. Musk was trapped with no obvious way out of the situation. Against the backdrop of growing competition and Tesla's deteriorating reputation, he needed to make tough decisions. However, even his habit of finding solutions in crisis situations was not having the desired effect. Musk tried to influence the situation through politics, and this turned out to be one of the main reasons for his deteriorating situation. His statements became increasingly radical, and support from old allies began to wane. Musk found that his ambitions and political views began to have a direct impact on the success of his business. At the same time, his position began to be influenced not only by political forces in the US and Canada, but also in Europe, where Tesla was losing more and more customers every month. In order to survive in these conditions, Musk had to react quickly to changes and realize that the remaining resources were beginning to run out. For him, the toughest challenge was recognizing that the time when Tesla was a technology leader was gone. Competitors were offering new cars that outperformed Tesla on all fronts. While Tesla struggled with political sanctions and falling sales, Chinese brands like BYD were taking over the market at a faster pace, offering cheaper and more comfortable cars that were becoming more popular by the day in Europe and Asia. In such a situation, Musk found himself in an environment where his role as a technology leader was already in doubt. With each new step Musk took, his options became more and more limited. He realized that if he didn't take decisive action in the coming months, Tesla could be on the brink of extinction. However, was there still time to regain control of the situation and start working to restore the company's reputation? Amidst constant pressure from all sides, the problems within Tesla began to escalate. With each passing month, with each move to lower car prices, the company was losing ground. Even despite Musk's strong efforts, supply problems, component shortages, and increasing competition were turning into a real disaster. Tesla, which was a symbol of technological leadership, was facing more and more serious internal difficulties. Musk had always said that he would promote vertical integration, which allowed the company to avoid many of the problems associated with dependence on external supplies. But that turned out not to be the kind of solution that would meet the challenges of the global economy. With shortages of components, especially chips and batteries, the vertical integration strategy didn't work. Throughout 2024, Tesla experienced supply issues, which in turn affected vehicle production. While competitors were able to secure a steady supply, Tesla faced shortages of key components such as batteries and chips, which delayed new models and reduced overall productivity. This has only increased the pressure on Musk and his team. For a company that had prided itself for years on being able to adapt to any challenge, the supply crisis proved to be a true catastrophic factor.
Tesla shares have slumped by more than 9% amid a fall in sales in Europe. The electric vehicle maker posted lower sales across 5 European countries, including France and the UK. Joining us now to discuss this is CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio. Remy, why do we believe these sales are dropping? What's driving that?
Sure. Well, Errol, basically what Elon Musk has been talking about over the past, say, few months, ever since Donald Trump's election back to the White House, that has been fueling this anger, this frustration, some even say disgust towards Musk, and they're taking it out on Tesla. Tesla now feeling the pain. But because of what's happening here in Europe, Tesla sales fell by nearly half across the continent just last month, 45%.
Musk tried to find solutions in unconventional measures. For example, he began to overhaul his entire logistics and supplier strategy. Instead of relying on the usual channels, Musk invested in setting up his own factories to produce these components. But such moves, while ambitious, couldn't solve the problem quickly, and Tesla found itself trapped in old patterns. Supply problems led to production delays, which in turn drove up the cost of the cars as manufacturing costs rose. Customers who had once eagerly anticipated Tesla's new models now began looking for alternatives. This process was accelerating by the day, and competitors, including Chinese companies, were offering cars that were superior to Tesla in many key features, including price and technology. Amid this crisis, Musk began to look towards new projects and the possibility of diversifying his business to sustain the company. However, this also drew criticism. Many felt that Musk was too involved with other projects such as SpaceX and Neuralink, and his focus was blurring, which in turn was affecting his ability to handle the crisis at Tesla. Instead of focusing solely on saving his car empire, Musk continued to throw his energies into other ambitious projects. This caused growing discontent both within the company and among investors, who began to wonder if Musk was distracting from the company's core purpose. One of the biggest challenges for Tesla has been layoffs and internal instability. Musk, who has always maintained a rigid corporate culture, faced a wave of discontent from employees. Tesla lost up to 15% of its employees during 2024. This loss was caused not only by external economic problems, but also by deteriorating working conditions within the company. Musk was used to demanding the maximum from his employees, and at some points this was justified when the company was going through better times. However, in the crisis, when employees began to realize that their efforts were not bringing the expected results, many of them began to look for more stable jobs in other companies. The move of former Tesla engineers to rival companies such as BYD and Lucid was another major blow to the company. Musk found himself in a situation where he needed to rethink his own corporate policies and adapt them to the new realities. But even if the supply and layoff problems were resolved, Tesla was still overshadowed by its growing competition. When Musk's company first announced its intention to release a budget electric car, the Model 2, he believed it would be a new step towards strengthening Tesla's position. However, production problems and the high level of a competition in the electric car market forced the company to postpone these plans. The market that once belonged to Tesla has now become an arena for Chinese and European brands to offer customers cars with better performance, better batteries and lower prices. Chinese companies like BYD, NIO and XPeng were rapidly gaining market share with each passing month. These brands were more flexible and nimble in reacting to market changes, while Tesla was stuck in old models. In addition, Tesla started losing customers not only because of quality and price, but also because of its image. Previously, Tesla was synonymous with progress and technological superiority, but now that competitors were offering better quality and cheaper cars, the opinion of the brand began to change. In Germany, where Tesla was once considered a technology flagship, sales are down 70%. Musk, who had always been willing to fight against all odds, found himself facing a situation where his innovation and ambition could no longer save the company. Even his famous Cybertruck, which was promised as a revolutionary product, was not as successful as expected. Too high prices, safety issues, and a failed design made it more of an experiment than a mass-market product. The impact of falling sales on the stock market was inevitable. Tesla's stock continued to fall, and amidst all these difficulties, Musk began to lose investor confidence. No matter what he did, whether it was making new investments in innovative technologies or trying to lower the price of cars, it could no longer restore the trust that the company and Musk himself had once built. The 50% drop in stock price and loss of market capitalization were alarming signals for the entire industry. However, the most troubling signal for Tesla was the behavior of investors. Previously, the company was a symbol of reliability, even despite the market volatility and political situation. But now investors started looking at the company with different eyes. Musk and his team were forced to admit that the innovations that once allowed Tesla to stand on a pedestal were no longer having the same effect. What now? Musk is faced with a difficult choice: stay in his chair and continue to fight to regain lost ground, or step aside to make way for new leadership that can adapt Tesla to a changing world. In recent months, Polls among major shareholders and industry experts have shown that the idea of possibly replacing Musk with a new CEO has emerged. Some have argued that without new solutions and fresh ideas, Tesla will continue to lose ground. But if Musk leaves, can the company regain its former glory? Or is this the beginning of the end for Tesla?